is moderating because of tightening credit standards, rising borrowing costs, and weak consumer confidence. Summing up, we raised the 3 key ECB interest rates by 75 basis points today and expect to raise interest rates further because inflation remains far too high and is likely to stay above our target for an extended period. This major step front-loads the transition from the prevailing highly accommodative level of policy rates towards levels that will support a timely return of inflation to our 2% medium-term target. Our future policy rate decisions will continue to be data-dependent and follow a meeting-by-meeting approach. We stand ready to adjust all of our instruments within our mandate to ensure that inflation returns to our medium-term inflation target. We are now ready to take your questions.
Thank you, Madame Lagarde. The first question goes to Luke Heighton of Market News International.
Good afternoon, President Lagarde. 2 questions, if I may. The first, could you give us a flavour of the Governing Council's discussions, the arguments for and against that led to today's decision to raise rates by 75 basis points and not, for example, 50 or 100 basis points? And then my second question, from the present standpoint, how close to both the neutral rate of interest and the expected terminal rate does today's decision bring us, in your view? Thank you.
Thank you very much for these 2 questions. I'll take them in turn. On your first question, the Governing Council unanimously decided to raise the 3 key ECB rates by 75 basis points. We had different views around the table, a thorough discussion, but the outcome of our discussions was a unanimous decision. So how did we come to that decision? As I have said before, and as I have repeated in that monetary policy statement, since our last July meeting, we are data dependent and operate meeting by meeting. This is the methodology that we adopt. So we were presented by staff with their projection. We had the inflation numbers and the growth outlook, of course. So in the face of these extremely high numbers, the last reading was 9.1 for a monthly reading. But if you look at the last 10 readings, they were the last 10 highest readings in turn. We had a good analysis of the decomposition of the sources of inflation, a good analysis of where the inflation actually lies and what products are particularly affected. And while we conclude, of course, that energy is still the major source of inflation, it's 38.3% compared with a year ago, slightly moving down in these August numbers. But it is still a dominant factor, as is the increase in food. But we also have an inflation that spreads across the whole range of products, in particular in the service sector, where supply factors are less prevalent and where demand plays a role. So we have a range of the product and services that are actually north of 4%. So in the face of an inflation that is extremely high, that is of a magnitude and persistence across sectors of that nature, obviously determined action had to be taken. And this is very much in line with our determination to actually normalize monetary policy as we started back in December. So for those who consistently repeat that the European Central Bank is lagging behind, I contend that we are on a journey that started back in December, where we decided to put an end to the asset purchases under PEP and under APP, to move out of negative interest rates as we did back in July, and now to continue on our normalization path with a front-loading exercise that we conducted today, because we believe that the deviation from target is such that it warrants this front-loading. And we also decided that this was not an isolated decision, but that we would raise interest rates further. We didn't say that we would raise interest rates at 75% as if 75 was the norm. It is not. We will determine, meeting by meeting, on the basis of data, how we reach to that level of interest which will actually return us to the 2% target in the medium term. It is not there at the moment. Our forecast at the end of December, which is not the medium term, but it's the end of our projection exercise, is at 2.3. We are not there. So we have more journey to cover going forward. But we had a very, you were interested in the flavour of the Governing Council. We had a very cordial, effective, deep discussion on all these matters. And that certainly helped us on the basis of the proposals by staff and the recommendation by our chief economist, Philip Lane, to actually go collectively in the direction of this 75 basis points hike. Now, you asked me about how close we are to the rate. Whether you call it a neutral or terminal is obviously different. But I would like to say this. What I know today is that 0 is not the neutral rate, and that where we are is not the neutral rate. We are heading in that direction. It takes a front-loading. It will take further hikes in the next several meetings of a magnitude and at a pace that will be determined meeting by meeting and on the basis of the data that we receive. But we are certainly heading there, because that's where we believe that we will actually deliver on our 2% medium-term target as indicated in our strategy.
Thank you, President. The next question goes to Annette Weisbach of CNBC. Annette, please.
Thank you very much for taking my question. I have one on quantitative tightening, because clearly that could be also a way to drain liquidity from the system and help you to tame inflation. Have you discussed it? Is that something you are looking at? And then one question about your economic outlook, because clearly for 2023, you are seeing growth coming back to 0.9%, if I'm right. But this is still quite optimistic compared to other forecasts. So
that's 24.
24, yeah.
1.9.
Okay, but for next year, why don't you see a recession? Because many economists do see one. Thank you.
Let me start with the second one. So the baseline outlook is 3.1 for 22, 1.9 for 23, and, sorry, I'm getting confused as well now. So, back, 3.1 for 22, 0.9 for 23, and 1.9 for 24. So that's the baseline that we have in the projection by staff. We also have, and I think you will be receiving those documents as well, we also have a downside scenario that has been produced by staff on the basis of assumptions.
Back up. Back up. This is irony. On the very day the mayor of this city has a delegation down on the border, they're persecuting people. Can't hear you, David.
Can't hear you.
Stop pushing me, bro.
Can't hear you on this side.
60 days from today.
This side.
Steve, okay. There you go. Hey, Steve, what do you want to say?
Stop hurting America, you greasy grifter! Stop hurting America, you greasy two-bit grifter!
You were a little too much on top of me.
It wasn't good.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
He kept on looking at
You shouldn't. You're kind of semi.
Yeah, I can slide the whole day. Slide all day? I thought it was probably. I mean, nope.
Yep. I'm going to shut it down now. It's still live. Give me 1 second.
He said that. He said the mayor was having a delegation here. Yeah. And then he said something to the effect of how many days it is from the election.
Thank you, Jen.
I'll come back.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I know. I heard two more channels. Did you hear what he said?
No, I didn't.
It was turning that way. You want like from the camera? See what I can.
But this is
Where do you want to stand now?
I'm going inside. It's happening.
He'll be arraigned.